Hey everybody, before this video starts, I just wanted to give a big thank you to our first ever patron, Stephen R. Your support makes these videos possible, so thank you very much. Hello and welcome back everybody, I'm the Rambling Director, and today we are going to be talking about the Chinese Phantom, Song at Midnight. Now, this is one of the most underrated of the Phantom movies, and I say that knowing that there are a lot of underrated Phantom movies. But this one is kind of unique in the situation because for a long time you couldn't find a copy of this for love or money that had good English subtitles. But now there's actually available with really good subtitles on YouTube, free to watch. All you gotta do is type in Song at Midnight full movie and you'll find it pretty quickly. Now, the video quality is still not incredible, and that really I think comes down to the fact that this movie probably has not been preserved or remastered the way that it deserves to. But Song at Midnight was pretty influential in Chinese film and has been remade several times over the years, most notably as a film called The Phantom Lover, which I'd love to talk about more later. I've seen it a couple times, however, I wasn't able to find it when I was setting up these videos for review. But if I do find it, I will be sure to review it because it is a fantastic movie, maybe better than the original. The film starts off with the caretakers of this abandoned theater talking about when this theater troupe is going to come and perform. The theater is scheduled for demolition, but they're going to have one more show to put on, and it's from the Angel Theater Troupe. We then cut over to a character who we're going to be properly introduced to in a bit. Her name is... I looked it up to see how it was pronounced. I think I got this right. I think it's pronounced Xia. X-I-A in transliterated English. And we see that she is watching a shadowy figure on the wall who is singing to her. And by the way, the music in this film is really fantastic. So there's a couple of extended opera sequences where we see a couple songs being sung in full. Most of the songs are short little bits and bobs of opera, just to give you an idea. But a couple times this shadowy figure is singing and we get the entire song. And the song is really good, even if when translated into English and you know what they're saying, the song is a little odd. And I think part of that is just where we lose something in translation. It's not quite as artistic or poetic as maybe it would be if you were actually able to understand the language. However, I don't speak Mandarin or Cantonese or any other Asian language, so I really only can rely on the subtitles. So the Angel Theater Company arrives, and the caretaker shows them around, and there are some really great sequences of suspense. There are moments in the film where they really take their time and allow things to linger in the creepiness of the atmosphere that they've set up. And so much of this movie is built out of atmosphere. I mean, a lot of it is just taking time to let you soak in this world they've created, and it's very good, especially for the time period. I'll give them kind of a pass on it, but there are some moments where the soundtrack just cuts out, and it's really odd. Like the music is building and building and it's just gone. That's it, you know? It really is kind of odd. And it does take you out of the movie whenever it happens. I always love this little scene where one of the actors just says, "This place is a dump. Why did we agree to come here?" And they're like, "Well, yeah, we got to start cleaning up tomorrow because this place is really trashed." They made it clear this place was scheduled for demolition. What did you think you were going to get? They talk a little bit about the play they're going to be performing, and I love that it's actually foreshadowing to something that we're going to hear about later on. It's kind of a neat little detail. So a character named Sun, or Soon, I think it's pronounced Sun, is cast as the main character in this new play they're doing, and he needs some time to practice. He can't quite get a hang on this melody, so they leave him alone to practice, and that is when the Phantom shows up. At first, Sun is really scared, as you would be if a singing voice, you know, appeared out of nowhere, but he actually it pretty quickly picks up from the caretaker that this guy is trying to help him. From that point on, the Phantom's shadow is teaching Sun how to sing. And in the next time we hear him, which is actually during a performance of the play, he now has the same voice as the Phantom, which is a great little detail and it's very important later. The Phantom has taught him how to sing so perfectly like himself that they sound the same. Now that's your first big major change in terms of Phantom lore, because the Phantom is not teaching Christine how to sing in this, he's teaching a man how to sing with the intention of getting to his Christine character, but we'll hear more about that in just a sec. Now that Sun is a huge success, he ends up going back and meeting the Phantom personally, who is wearing this long cloak that covers over his face and it's draped across him. All you can see is his hands. I have to wonder if when they were making costumes for the Lloyd Webber show, if they didn't base the point of no return cloak on Song Dan Ping in this movie. Speaking of Song Dan Ping, I kind of spoiled it for myself there. Song Dan Ping is the name of the Phantom, and he introduces himself to Sun and tells him his backstory. Here's where we get a great little flashback, almost exactly halfway into the movie. This is another great little reference that I'm not even sure was intentional, but this flashback telling the backstory lines up with roughly where Christine is telling Raoul the flashback of how she met the Phantom. He explains to Sun how he was an actor and a revolutionary. And at this old playhouse, long before it was scheduled for demolition, and back when it was in its heyday, he performed his revolutionary musical, Hot Blooded. Song sees Zhao in secret, like Romeo and Juliet. But the evil Tang Jun the more I say these names, the more I feel like I'm recording the intro for an anime. The evil Tang Jun sees Song as a rival and convinces Zhao's father that Song is a part of the Revolutionary Party, which of course he is. And according to Zhao, her father also says that actors are the lowest of the low. I don't know, they treat that like it's a worse insult than him being part of the Revolutionary Party, which could get him murdered, so I felt like I needed to emphasize it. There's a lot of talk about keeping his revolutionary work secret, which I have to question considering he just put on a famous musical about revolution. Next, the two lovers are talking and... Monty Python and the Holy Grail? What are you doing here? Dan Ping is mobbed for being a revolutionary, and Zhao's father has him whipped. Now, up to now, I haven't mentioned it, but the actor who plays Song Dan Ping, Shan Jin, is a spectacular actor. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Liam Neeson in Darkman. He's got this real handsome, suave kind of sophistication, but also this underlying anger. And then after he gets scarred and becomes the Phantom, the whole time you see him, he's both sympathetic and tragic, but also the sort of character that you could totally believe could kick your butt if you really upset him. It's a hard balance to play between somebody who is that sort of strong, angry, war hero, but also tragic and heartbreaking, and he cries and it makes you cry for him. Now, Tang Jun tries to convince Zhao that, oh, hey, Song Dan Ping was an awful guy and you shouldn't be in love with him. I mean, come on, you guys are two different stations here. Kind of like the Paris character in Romeo and Juliet, again, to draw that comparison. But Zhao absolutely says, no, I am not into you, and how dare you use this opportunity to try to get into my pants. That is just completely inappropriate. Tang Jun basically, from this, surmises that she is never going to fall in love with him, and out of revenge, throws acid in Song Dan Ping's face. Let's stop for a second to talk about a little Phantom history. It may surprise you if you don't follow a lot of the movies or if you're only familiar with the Lloyd Webber musical to find out that the majority of Phantom of the Opera adaptations have not been about a man born deformed and shunned by society. No, they have actually been about an acid-scarred musician who hides away for one reason or another. That reason actually changes depending on the version. Sometimes he's a criminal who has to hide away. Very rarely is his deformity something that's kept him from being loved. For the most part, he's somebody who was burned either by acid or in a fire. You got the Claude Rains version, the Herbert Lom version, the Maximilian Schell version. Heck, even the Phantom of the Mall has him burned in a house fire. So the majority of these films have used that. The Phantom is a disfigured hero, not a deformed hero. Most people assume that started with Claude Rains. However, it actually started some 6 or 7 years earlier in Song at Midnight, the first acid-scarred, disfigured Phantom. Now, it's very different from the musical or from the book, where the man has never felt any affection in his life. In this, he had affection and love, but lost it. Because when he loses his handsome face, he assumes that there's no way Jia could ever love him. Dan Ping eventually has the bandages removed from his face, and when he sees himself in the mirror, he's filled with shock and terror. The drama of a man seeing his once handsome face, now destroyed beyond recognition, is an incredible moment of drama, and you'd think more versions would include it. But the Claude Rains version, Herbert Lom, every version, they just skim over it like it wouldn't psychologically affect him, but it really should. Just to add to this, Shan Jin might give one of the best performances of all time as Song Dan Ping. I mean, I know I did mention it briefly earlier, but I just feel the need to really praise this guy. His acting's incredible, and when he sees his ruined face for the first time, it is up there with Chaney as one of the greatest performances that I've ever seen. Well, he tells the caretaker to bring Xiao's message back to her and tell her that he is dead. He's dead and he'll never see her again because he realizes that he just can't face her like this. But, tragic, ironic twist here, when she hears that he is dead, she goes star-craving insane. And it is one of the most creatively shot scenes I've seen in a 1930s film. So Song Dan Ping finishes his story about his past, and Sun is just kind of accepting all of this, and Song is like, yeah, man, I go to her every night and I sing to her, but she thinks it's like a ghostly apparition. She thinks she's just hearing my voice on the wind. But I knew that if I could find a handsome young man that I could teach to sing just like me, then you could go to her and comfort her and take my place. So Song Dan Ping is actually using Sun as kind of a metaphorical mask for himself. It's a very fascinating thing, and it's really odd that more Phantom films haven't done creative stuff like this in the past. Most versions stick straight to the story established in the Claude Rains film, rather than doing really creative stuff with it. Song Dan Ping also puts this huge emphasis on the fact that it's been 10 years, and he says it over and over and over again, and because I'm a Phantom nerd, all I can think when he does that is 10 long years. So Sun goes and sings to Jia, who believes it is in fact Song Dan Ping back from the dead. It's really quite sad, because grief has left her so desperate to believe that he's resurrected, that when she looks at Sun, she sees Dan Ping instead. It's doubly tragic, because you actually could argue that in light of this information, if Song Dan Ping had just gone to her, in her insanity, she might have actually just overlooked the deformity altogether. It's also sad because he never considers the idea that she could love him in spite of the deformity, which puts all of this right in Song Dan Ping's own lap. He is his own worst enemy. A lot of modern complainer critics would say that that ruins the story because he's responsible for his own heartbreak. I think it's freaking brilliant because so many of us are our own worst enemies and don't even realize it. Now, some of the dialogue is a little stilted, but again, that could just be a loss from translation, so I don't hold it against it. The next day, Jia is unsure if any of it is real, but she does seem to be recovering from her madness, so she is getting better. There's a great moment where Sun is talking to his girlfriend Lou about star-crossed lovers, and he's really kind of upset about this idea, but it also makes him value her more, whereas she thinks the whole concept is very romantic because she's not experienced it directly. So you have these two kind of counterpoints of view. So Song gives Sun a revised version of Hot Blooded to save the company from bankruptcy, and you know what? It works. And Sun performs again with Dan Ping's voice. He's a huge success. But then Dan Ping sees Sun with his girlfriend Lou, and aside from this driving home how lonely he is, he realizes all of his plans were for naught. And he confronts Sun about it and says like, bro, I didn't know you already had a girlfriend. He basically says the whole idea was for you to be with Jia, and you already have a lover. But what I love about Song Dan Ping, and one of the things that makes him such a cool character, is he doesn't hold this against Sun. He actually is like, no, true love is so precious. I would never ask you to give up your girlfriend to save my girlfriend. You need to hold on to that love if you found real love. But it's also depressing to him. And I think that's one of the things that make him such an interesting, compelling character is his motivation. He actually wants Sun to become Jia's lover and take his place. His own irreplaceability is a flaw in his eyes, not a source of pride, which makes him such a unique character. I've never seen another character with this sort of motivation. There's also this wonderfully atmospheric moment where the lonely Song Dan Ping stands alone in darkness thinking, and it's really tragic. Soon finds out that Lou has gone to Tang Jun's place. She was invited there. From what I understand, it seems like he's being very forward with her, and she goes to his place, but not to do anything sexual with him. Instead, she goes to bite his head off and tell him that she deserves more respect than he's giving her. It's really an awesome scene. Unfortunately, it is immediately followed by her coming home, and because Soon knows where she was, he assumes that she slept with Tang Jun, and it breaks his heart, obviously, but it breaks her heart too because he's really, really mean about it, obviously, as you would, and he doesn't believe her when she says, I didn't cheat on you. So it's this nice little spin on star-crossed lovers. I normally don't like a third act breakup where there's like a misunderstanding or something like that that comes between the characters, but this is actually pretty believable, and it only lasts for a couple minutes. It doesn't last long though because Tang Jun immediately comes into her dressing room, tries to look at her naked, and then like holds her down and like, I don't know if he's trying to actually kill her or if he's trying to assault her. It's not entirely clear to me, but whatever it is, his intentions are not good. I assume that's a censorship thing, that they probably couldn't have him actually doing anything sexual, so instead he just kind of holds her mouth and her shoulders, and it's a little unclear, but you get the vibe. It's not good. These are not good things that are happening. Tang Jun doesn't have a lot of screen time, but he is actually one of the most nasty characters you'll ever see on screen. He even keeps saying that he's only talking to her and attempting to like have a relationship with her purely because he pities her. Gosh, he is just a vile character. Sun comes in to try to save her, but Tang pulls out a gun and shoots Lou. That's right, he just shoots her dead. The first time I saw it, I was shocked senseless. Luckily, at that exact moment, Song Dan Ping shows up to save the... Oh my gosh. I don't care where you are, I don't care what culture you live in, I don't care what timeline you're in. That's horrifically scary.
你还认不认识10年前被你谋害过的宋丹平吗？
Ooh, don't play it again. That's terrifying. Get it off the screen. By the way, Lou is actually dead. She died from that gunshot. It's really sad, but unfortunately she's never really mentioned again. That is a detriment, is right now, from this point on in the film, it feels like a couple of scenes are missing. Because an angry mob comes in from out of nowhere, and they seem to be coming after Song Dan Ping, But we don't really get the reason for that until after the mob already shows up. And again, Lou is just never mentioned again, even though she was like the love of Sun's life. Maybe they're coming in response to the multiple gunshots. I don't know, but it just seems like they just kind of come out of nowhere. Now, despite being really sped up, the fight scene is good and well choreographed. It feels very hectic and quite realistic for a movie from the 30s. Movies from the 30s were not really known for having the best fight choreography. Tang ends up falling out a window to his death, but the angry mob chases Dan Ping into the streets and out into the woods. With Dan Ping on his way out, Sun goes to Jia and tells her the truth about everything. And he says the warlords have discovered that he's a revolutionary and that he's still alive. See, that's what I'm talking about. Feels like there should have been a scene really getting that across. I just didn't get that. Maybe it was the version I watched. Maybe something was left on the cutting room floor. I don't know, but it just seems like that should have been explained better. Soon explaining this sends her back into her madness, because now she knows that Dan Ping is alive, but is certain that within moments, he'll actually be killed for real. It adds a little extra tragic twist on everything. It's kind of like when Juliet wakes up and sees Romeo drinking the poison in Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. If she had just spoken a couple seconds earlier, the entire tragedy could have been avoided, and it kind of has that sort of feeling. Song is chased into an abandoned house by the mob, which is then set on fire. The Phantom Reviewer and several others have pointed out that this is almost certainly taken directly from the Universal Frankenstein movie, where the monster's trapped in a burning windmill at the end. As he stands in this house waiting to die, Song Dan Ping is obviously heartbroken, realizing that he's lost the love of his life, his only true friend, and will die for the revolutionary cause without ever seeing the changes he fought so hard to bring about. So with that, he jumps into the river. Now, I assume that he dies when he jumps into the river and commits suicide. That feels like a very poetic, again, kind of Romeo and Juliet sort of thing to do. However, I'm told there's a sequel to this movie and that he's alive in it, so I guess maybe he just escaped into the water. I kind of like the idea of him killing himself better, though. I feel like that suits the story better. Jia awakens from her madness and recovers her sanity at the last minute. Sun then vows that the two of them will work hard to continue the fight against the warlords in Dan Ping's name. And the film ends with Sun and Jia together as a couple, just as Dan Ping wanted. Sun is even wearing one of Dan Ping's silk shirts, almost literally stepping into Dan Ping's role after his death. This is kind of interesting because everything that Dan Ping tried to accomplish by faking his death is accomplished when he actually dies. Jia is sane again and in love with someone new. Dan Ping's art and even his voice will live on, and he's inspired a new generation of revolutionaries. Oh, and both Jia and Sun have lost someone, so they understand each other's pain. So everything Dan Ping planned comes to pass, but he had to die to make it happen. This is brilliantly set up, brilliantly paid off, and yet none of it is like in your face or preachy. Now, I understand that some of you might say, is this really a Phantom movie? But let me prove it to you. Christine is pining after her dead father. Jia is pining after her dead lover. There's a protagonist who has an ugly face and has to hide it, and feels as if he cannot be loved because of his disfigurement or disformity, which is actually more than some Phantom movies include at all. The theater troupe is called the Angel Theater Troupe, like Angel of Music. Song Dan Ping gives another character singing lessons. The Phantom gives somebody singing lessons. Again, some versions don't even include that. There's an emphasis on mirrors. There's even a girl in her dressing room who gets not necessarily kidnapped. I mean, I guess Lou gets kidnapped, but she doesn't leave the dressing room. She's held against her will, and the scene starts off in a dressing room. Okay, that one might be a little vague, but I kind of think it seems Phantom-y. In the book, the Phantom is a composer who writes Don Juan Triumphant. In this, he is a composer who wrote Hot Blooded. So this Phantom is a composer. Again, tons of Phantom movies, he's not even a composer. And finally, there's an angry mob, just like in the Chaney version. Is it a loose inspiration? Is it a loose Phantom movie? Maybe. But I think it has all of the great elements to be considered among the pantheon of Phantoms. It might be the most original take on the idea ever created, featuring an entirely grand cast. Everybody, even the minor characters, are fantastically cast, and of course the Phantom himself might be one of the best performances I've ever seen. It's really well shot for a 1937 Chinese movie, and it even has a really lovely score. The only criticism I can lob against it there is that the sound editing isn't great. But then again, most modern movies have terrible sound editing, so I guess it's one of those things you just kind of have to take or leave. For me, I can look past it and see what is truly a great Phantom movie. So that's all I got for today, everybody. Thank you very much for watching. God bless you, and I will see you in the next one.